Welcome to the new episode of Pop Culture Petri Dish, where we talk about science fiction and science fact and where the two meet. In other words, we'll talk about some of our favorite sci-fi films and books and stuff, and talk about, does it have a real counterpart? Or doesn't it? And also jokes. I'm one of your co-hosts, Abe and Cristian, as always. I'm joined with
Christian Ramirez. I am the other co-host, and we have a doozy for you today. This one's going to be fun.
What are we going to talk about today?
Today, we are talking about alien invasions. Obviously, this one's going to rely a little more on sci-fi because that's where most of alien invasions are happening, unless you're into conspiracy theories, but that's not what this podcast is about. Yeah, and so basically, I guess the best way to start this off is to talk about that even real scientists have thought about things like alien invasions. If this was something that Stephen Hawking, in his later, the last 20 years of his career in his life, he talked a lot about potential things, and he didn't go as much. He liked to talk about time travel, and he liked to talk about aliens and stuff like that. And this was one of the things that apparently was something that could potentially be terrifying to him if it actually came about, because what he had to say was that, quote, one day we might receive a signal from a planet like this, talking about Gliese 832c.
Which is one of the Goldilocks planets,
right,
a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
Found.
And but he says, but we should be wary of answering back. Meeting an advanced civilization could be like Native Americans encountering Columbus. That didn't turn out so well.
Ooh.
He was very pessimistic on the idea of us meeting aliens.
Just like bombing smallpox blankets on us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think he's wrong to think that way. Obviously, he's very smart. He's smarter than me. And that's supported by our entire history. Humans have just been terrible to anybody who's less technologically advanced.
Oh, I thought you meant this has been supported by that he's smarter than me. like you needed to prove to me that he's smarter than you. Tell our audience, Christian, are you smarter than Stephen Hawking was? No, I get what you're saying now.
But no, yeah. So the idea that a more technologically advanced whatever humanoid species, alien species, would just be awful to us. They would just take our stuff and kill us and not even think about it, because they would treat us basically like we treat ants.
Well, that is how, if we're going to space, there's the Discovery Explorer element, but even that, lost its luster in a decade or two. It kind of seems like if we're going to go, we got to find a, legitimate, economic reason.
Yeah.
And that means resource allocation, which means that if we're going to planets, we want to, now we're Avatar.
Yeah.
Now we're we got to get that sweet, gold stuff. Need unobtainium or whatever it was. That, and therefore, if you have a culture or a species of, they're just really good at spacefaring, better than we are. Mm-hmm. They've probably figured out how to do defense and offense and how to mine whatever they need. Yeah. If it's gold or some other, water or whatever, they're I'm going to take that right up.
Mm-hmm. And the funny thing about this particular quote that Stephen Hawking, this was a part of one of the video specials that he was doing. The funny thing to me is that when I was researching it, another guy who works at SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, that the ones that they're listening and they're sending out signals, and
Jodie Foster in Contact.
Yeah.
And then she falls in love with Matthew McConaughey.
But yes, this guy, Seth Shostak, the thing that he had to say in as a counter to what Hawking said was not any more comforting or any more positive, because he basically just said, any society with the capability to threaten Earth is overwhelmingly likely to already have the kit required to pick up the leakage we've been wafting skyward for 7 decades. The requisite radio technology is far easier than the necessary rocket technology. So if there are aliens out there that are hostile to us, they've already heard us.
Right.
So if they already do know that we exist, if they're hostile, there's nothing that we can do about it, because they're so far technologically advanced to us to be able to travel across the vast spaces of the universe.
So they got it on lock.
Yeah.
Apparently.
So if they're hostile, oh well, like then I guess we're screwed. Like that.
Yeah, because they spacefaring.
That's it.
They can just like launch shit from orbit.
Yeah.
We can barely do that.
Yeah, a meteor took out the dinosaurs. So
Space Force! Unite! So let's look at some of the pop cultural standpoints, like films that have like ones that went well for us, ones that did not go well for us, because I think there's something interesting. I kind of want to start at this point. There was like, movies are always a reflection of like the mood.
Right.
That begins like a trend. Like
Yes.
it's not like 9/11 happened and then a bunch of people started hating America.
Yeah.
It kind of worked the other way.
Yeah.
And in the same way, there's a reasons why we got a lot of like slasher films in like the 70s and 60s were like all Bonds and musicals and everything's going great.
Yeah, it's like kind of like the political ideology of zombies versus vampires and why those movies are popular.
Because like the movies are always like this kind of luxury trade that is like the mantle of like the core base of America in our case for movies. And then the following generation gets tired of that. And then like Wes Craven's like, yeah, but what if we burned it all down?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, fuck yeah, dude, let's kill some teenagers. And that shit's been happening. And that's also why we get a lot of like rah America stuff right after 9/11. And now we're getting a little bit more, into different stories regarding America's role to play. And, the clusterfuck that is our, international situation. So it's just like, it's this constant boom and bust or wax and wane of this kind of very like symbolic nature of like how our economics and how our political machineries are doing right now.
Yeah.
Kind of checking the oil gauge and looking at it and saying, hey, is this like fucked up or what? And that's why we got things even earlier than that with like invasion of the Body Snatchers, which was like the original was like 50. The
original was in the 50s,
and then 70s was the one that mostly everyone knows. But the original one came out of like the Red Scare, so it was like anyone can be a communist, like, and they look like you, they act like you, but they're not you, they're commies, and it's just like that's where that came from. So there's always a psychological effect of an invasion, different types. So invasion like The Thing or Body Snatchers or Annihilation thing, all topics we've talked on this podcast, but they're all unique in that they fuck with your brain and make you feel you can't trust people. And like you mentioned with like Dracula's, it's about this aristocratic like feeding off the lower classes. Zombies is we all become mindless drones and we've lost our roots of what makes us human and stuff like that. So there's always a psychological effect with whatever you're saying the invasion is happening. What are other types of invasions that have occurred in science fiction films or what have you? Yeah,
when I was doing the research on this, the most like prevalent categories of actual invasions, the infiltration, they're in 4 categories. The first one's infiltration, which you talked about, The Thing, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's when they get into the planet and we don't know that they're here. They're infiltrating our society rather than the second category, which is occupation, which is War of the Worlds. That's Independence Day. That's them coming here to destroy our stuff and take our planet. The next one is raids, which is I guess the best one that I thought of in this was the Predator, which is they're just coming here for whatever reason that they want to do, whatever their goals are, and they're just coming here and leaving.
They're like the Norse invaders.
Exactly.
They're not here to. I mean, they also took France, but like mostly they just had like summer raids where they like come up and be like, "We're gonna take your gold."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Fuck, no, all right, yeah." And then they'd be, "Peace, see you next year."
Yeah.
They're not interested in killing you unless you're in their way, but like ultimately they just take a little bit of stuff here or there because it's easy for them to do that.
Yeah. And the last one, this one's like kind of extra creepy to me. Is indifference or an accidental invasion. So this is just stuff, and in this one I use the categories of E.T. and District 9 because E.T. was here on purpose with his buddies, but he wasn't here to raid us, to do anything like that.
He's just like an explorer.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
He got stranded. Yeah.
And then in District 9, once again, they got stranded here. They weren't trying to get to Earth to take all of our stuff. It's just that they ended up getting stuck here, and now this is something that we have to deal with. And so those are the 4 different categories that we're gonna cover in this episode. So you already talked about infiltration. And I think that one is inherently the most psychologically scary.
Yeah, it's definitely the most taxing because you have to think about, depending on the case, you have to think about whether or not you are losing yourself or someone that you inherently trust is not who they claim to be.
Yeah.
Because I would definitely operate like McCready would.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like we got to stop it from getting there. But if it like the bubble bursts and it's already infecting everyone, and there's no real way we can be rebels against it because we can't even trust anyone, and everyone is like gets infected like that. Like, man, that would just be a terrible slow death of paranoia and just horrible thoughts.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Yeah, that's the invasion of the body snatchers too. It's that psychological fear that everybody that you loved is just going to become the enemy. Yeah. And that it's just happening inevitably. There's nothing we can do to stop it once it gets to a certain point.
Like another good version, or one I thought that did it well, and it still has the same problem, but like The World's End. Yeah. Because they have the smashy Eggman.
Yeah.
The blanks. Every one of these stories, like, we always win by the skin of our teeth. Like, we always win by just like, we're just going to go and maybe they have a queen and we kill the queen, or we just go and we just burn it out of existence. As long as we do this thing, it will keep, but notice how in all of these like infiltration scenarios, they're always contained by something.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like even an Alien, which is a horror movie, but it's technically a sci-fi.
Yeah.
And it's not really invading anything like a world, but it is invading the ship. And I think I've talked about this in like Alien, the first one, which was not an action adventure film, it's a horror film, and Aliens is more of an action adventure film. The reason it's a horror, I would call it, is that in a horror movie, it's always about like the monster controls the environment. Mm-hmm. Like the monster can be up in the rafters, it can be below you, it has complete control over everything. But it's still contained on the ship.
Right.
You know? Now, the second that it's like it has complete control of your environment.
Yeah, and the thing about the thing is that it looks exactly like your loved ones. The only way that you can tell is with a blood test. So are we going to blood test everyone every day?
Yep. That's the only way.
Yeah.
War of the Worlds, Mars Attacks, all these types of things.
Yeah, those ones I feel like are the most glorious ones. Like if as a human,
just war.
Yeah, and it's something that always ends up uniting the entire Earth against this alien force.
Or like Edge of Tomorrow, which seems like impossible because it's like has time on its side and stuff like that. But like it's always like you got a John McClane.
Yeah.
And he fucking sneezes on them and they all die, you know, or it's just like they just do it by pure gumption and, you know, just like...
Realistically, these aliens are smart enough to, A, know that there's the common cold.
Yeah, or like Signs, where it's like, why did we go to the water? Yeah, everyone knows that joke. M. Night Shyamalan, I don't think they lack water. What? But I mean, there's water everywhere. Like literally in the sky.
I mean, you can see water from space.
Yeah.
All the time.
All the time. It's a bad planet to come to if they don't like water.
There's always water, no matter how you're like, looking at the
We
Earth.
are stupid invaders. Signs. We should have looked for the signs. So then there's Raids. Yeah. Predator. That one's the most, like, to me, the only aliens that would do this, in my mind, and feel free to disagree, are, like, ones that are, like, kind of, they're better, like, spacefaring than we are, but they're not really that great.
Yeah.
Like, these are, like, guys who they can get, like, 5 light years away, like, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, it's a pretty big deal to raid, you know, like
yeah, exactly.
Like they can't be that great.
Right. They can't be so far advanced. It just means that their spacefaring technology is a little better than ours is now.
Yeah, enough that it justifies to take our stuff every now and then.
Yeah.
Because someone because space is so enormously large that if you need to like solve all space in order to be like, yeah, we're gonna bring all these fucking ships over here. It's like, damn, you got space down, dude. You just brought like 50,000 spaceships. That's like what? There's these space Vikings who are just like I don't know why I'm making a rowing motion right now. Only Christian can see. They're rowing in space. It's just like they wouldn't be they'd have to have very rudimentary like warp drives and stuff, right?
Yeah, I think it also could make sense that they were maybe a species that inherited the technology, like
the Goa'uld from Stargate.
Sure, that like maybe they had a conflict. Maybe they were a race that was being enslaved by another race of aliens, and they rebelled or whatever and took all this stuff from them. They don't really necessarily know how to use it, so all that they can do is row two different planets.
To space. They're like, get there. Raids are very strange to me. It also would be the least. Well, I guess depending on the indifference accidental category, it would like these all kind of your 1 through 4 that you did kind of they go down in terrifyingness to me. Raids are not obviously
right because they would affect
indifference can be very like oof because like annihilation as we talked about that's kind of indifference because it's just like a mutagen computer. It's just like, what's this? And it doesn't know it's killing you and all the things that you represent. Maybe it does. We don't know, but it could equally be indifference. I haven't read the book. Maybe they have an answer, but the movie stays away from it.
Yeah.
Even when it comes back, it doesn't understand. It's just making copies of copies, and Oscar Isaac is bleeding from the nose and then dies, basically. Yeah. Or doesn't die, but I mean, like, almost dies because it's just getting it wrong.
Yeah.
It's just trying combinations like it's a Lego box set of genetics. And that could be seen as indifference or accidental.
Yeah. That's why the fourth category, to me, has a lot of potential for like being really scary because the idea of something like
E.T.
Right. Yeah, E.T. obviously isn't scary, but
yeah, and he's looking for help.
Right, know? Exactly. Yeah, and I think in that case we need to help the aliens if they're looking for help. If they need our help, then there's probably something worse that they're getting away from that we are going to need their help because of. So maybe help the aliens if they crash land here. But also the idea like in Annihilation that it could have just been a meteor that landed here. We don't know why. It just managed to crash land on our planet.
Just happenstance.
Yeah. And it's just doing what it does in nature. Or it could be an alien species accidentally jettisoned some waste and it managed to land here and it's destroying our world. And that's why the indifference or accidental invasion to me has a lot of potential for fear because with the other ones we kind of understand that they have motivations. Like we know that this is their motive, this is what they're doing, this is why they're doing it. If it's an accident or if it's just they don't care that they managed to unleash a virus on us somehow, then there's nothing that we can do to stop it either.
Right. It's that old quote about like the blue whale literally eats a ton of like krill a day or whatever, and it's not like it thinks it's murdering. And like if you had a conversation with like malaria, it'd be like you're like the number one worst killer of us. It just doesn't know what it's doing. So there's both of those categories. Raids are they're kind of shitty space fares.
And I think those are maybe the most fun for like a silly action movie because like Predator is a great action movie. And so just the idea that there's a group of aliens that would come here and fight us for whatever reason, that's fun because that's also like a Battle Los Angeles, I think was one that was not a very good movie, but like a lot of shooting aliens.
Was that the Aaron Eckhart one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, but it was fun. A lot of alien shooting and
shoot them. Yeah. Occupation to me is like because it would just be all out war. It would just be like we can take you because we're better. So most cases, probably the assumption, like Professor Hawking stated, it wouldn't go well for us because they would just have us outgunned and outmanned. But the benefit of it is it would be over.
Yeah.
When it's over, that would suck, but it'd be over like in an explosion. the infiltration is not the bang, the whimper, and the whimper terrifies me to no end, because the infiltration it gets up in your psyche, man. There's a species of a science fiction television series, one of the longest standing sci-fi television series, Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And there's a and then I gave up on it because it fucking sucks. But they conceived of one of the most terrifying alien infiltration occupation, kind of. It plays both, which is, it's all the scary parts of infiltration that I've been talking about. And the reason it's scary as occupation is the occupation isn't happening. It's over. Yeah. They've already occupied. And the name of the terrifying alien species is called the Silence, and they look like the Greys, which is like we talked about, like people having dental surgery and like seeing like a pronounced like face and being like, oh, it's the Greys. And I think Maggie Mayfish had a video about it and stuff like that, about why the Greys, these big-eyed, long foreheaded, like aliens always come up. And they look like that for reasons of, like historical cadence. But the reason they're terrifying is that they have a self-defense mechanism. Is anytime that they're seen and they sense it, they have the ability in like a split second to make you not remember them and what just happened. And they can do it to city blocks. They can do it to all over the place. So how do you fight a war against an enemy that you don't know exists and is already everywhere? Yeah. And that's like even more terrifying. And the way that they solve it, which I thought was kind of clever, is that they start with like Sharpie marking how many times they've seen one. So they see one and they mark it down quickly before they forget, and then they forget and they walk around so that they know. And it also has a cool visual image because the guy thinks he's fine and he's walking, he's talking, and the person's like not there anymore. And then he looks down at his arm and he sees his arm's just covered in slashes. So he's like, oh, I'm in a room with like a bunch of them. Yeah. Like, so it's just like, it's a very terrifying, like psychologically I know that Doctor Who's had a lot of like sci-fi concepts that have, really forged the trail on it. But it's become kind of a laughingstock, in my opinion, recently, because it's more about Christmas than it is about cool sci-fi. I mean, you can only go for so long. I mean, like Futurama and Rick and Morty have more interesting sci-fi concepts at this point. But it's only because they cater to a different audience. So that's not blaming anyone. Just saying that was a cool thing. That would be like one of the scariest ones next to the Thing and the Annihilation Monster. That would be terrifying. Yeah. I also like to mention Battleship, which is occupation. I love that film. It's the shittiest amazing film. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. That wasn't like important to the episode. I just wanted to talk about the Silence for 3 minutes and then shout out to Battleship. No,
that's good. It's real. That is scary in a way because we already have like a fear of the gray aliens. Because that's like an instinctual thing that we've talked about. It's something that's a fear that we've experienced from the time that we're little, that's just kind of buried in our subconscious. And that idea that they're everywhere and that they make you forget if you see one of them. So there's no way to observing that is terrifying. And like there's stuff like Fire in the Sky is one that like we already have that kind of stuff in our fictional past to look at and be like, oh, okay, well this is what Greys are and this is what they do to you when they capture you and stuff like that. And that's Fire in the Sky is one that is one of the alien invasion movies. That's not really an invasion. It's kind of a raid, but it's just aliens studying humans. That movie, I think I saw it when I was too young.
I also had that. It's terrifying.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, the things they do to that poor man. Yeah. And there's like, it's very like...
They don't care.
And it's very, like, it's visceral too. There's like goop and blood, and it's just like, oh,
covering his face with the stretchy membrane and then cutting open the mouth.
They really fuck with your. They're just going all over the place. They're just like, what do you want to do next? Let's waterboard him. Like it's just like what are these guys talking about in the kitchen? They're just like, what's next? I don't know. Let's go in there and cut on some genitals. Why? Don't know.
But yeah, that's one that scary movie that I would recommend. That's like, it's not really sci-fi because it's focused on the horror of it.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say because it's real, and we all should know that it's real. Yeah.
But that's one that
terrifying.
I don't think enough people have seen because it just is so viscerally terrifying.
I feel like it's got to be a hard R.
Yeah,
right?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
because I had the same experience. I watched it too early, and it like kept me up for a long time.
Yeah.
And I know this was last week. It's there's a lot of good concepts for aliens in terms of things that are able to horrify us. Because I thought for the longest time that E.T. was the first, like, because there was just a long time where we, especially with the Red Scare stuff, that really hit home, and like the Cold War aspect of stuff, that when we were developing a lot of our science fiction, fear was a huge thing, even when it wasn't aliens, when it was like robots, and like HAL and stuff.
Or even just like, I can't remember if it was they or them, but it was the one with the ants just got exposed to radioactivity, and so they were giant.
Yeah. Or they live. You know, like there's just a big time where science fiction made it so that it was about fearing the xenophobic other. And E.T. was this strange kind of digression where it was like, but what if aliens are like fun and I'm Spielberg? But I didn't realize that in like, I want to say 1955, like the thing from not the thing, sorry. That's 1955 is the thing from another world, which is what the thing is based on.
Yeah.
The Day the Earth Stood Still is known as one of the biggest
one.
first one. And I think that was 50s. And that had good aliens too. Yeah. So it's like, it's interesting that we had like in terms of our, like, cause you also have Flash Gordon and stuff like that, but that, I mean,
that's fantasy.
That's fantasy and stuff, and it's more of it's fantasy and action adventure, and it's more about a team. Like it's TV is always hard to do until you start talking about like late '90s to now.
Yeah.
When we started to serialize it and like make it more about narrative and make it more about like what's the story of these aliens. Like you have Falling Skies, and there's a lot of like sci-fi channel stuff that have been going on, but like. When we're talking like 40s, 50s, 60s, like we saw this very sharp turn into fear immediately.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that like one of our first big science fiction properties in terms of film was what if they like came over and it was like fucking great?
Yeah.
You know, like, so at least in cinema, in TV, or in TV, it's a little different because like aliens are almost always good. In like, you know, like the 90s and the 80s, you that Third Rock from the Sun and stuff. Yeah. Because you just want to know, like,
you want fun
they're
aliens.
cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and that one.
Shazbot.
That, I think there's also that, because the inherent fear that we have about a more technologically advanced species coming and destroying us is from our own history. It's because we understand that we have done that already to other people. That I think those ones, things like E.T., because the scene in E.T. where he's dying basically because after the FBI comes and they quarantine everything, that's still like when I saw it when I was a kid, so it's obviously made an impression on me, but it's still super powerful today because it's like, oh no, this is we're garbage.
We should be scared of it, and we shouldn't. So, are you saying we shouldn't have sent Voyager 1 out? Are you saying we shouldn't have radio waves? I don't know if he would have had an answer for that, but he's just mentioning that it's on the table that they're gonna ack our brains out. Are we ever gonna get to a point where we, as a collective, are just like, let's just shut it all down because the costs are too high? It's not that we don't have an answer. It's just like, if we're wrong though, if we're wrong, it's like the Los Alamos thing I think I was talking about a few times ago. Is the bomb big enough? No, it's not big enough. What do you mean it's this big? He's like, no, that's not what I'm asking. Is the atom bomb big enough to end all war? Yeah. Because that's not our end game is not to build a bigger bomb. It's to build the last bomb. Yeah. And it's just like, we're kind of in the same situation if we truly believe that occupation and infiltration and this kind of stuff is on the table.
Yeah.
So build that space ball. I guess is what I'm saying. Like, I don't know where I land on it either. I don't think it has an answer because there's too many variables, but
yeah,
I think it's an interesting notion. Yes.
Yeah. I think that obviously the most terrifying thing out of this is like the infiltration and that kind of stuff, because I don't even know, did the thing land here on purpose, or was it just...
It's not really said. It seems like it was a crash landing because,
right.
Like, you don't get any communication, but like it can't fly immediately out. I think it just froze too fast, and just couldn't get away.
Yeah.
But it's in its nature to essentially just
infect other people,
replicate.
Yeah.
So I think that's the answer.
Yeah.
Feel free to disprove me, but I don't think it had a purpose,
right,
other than it's obviously like kind of an exploratory vehicle.
Yeah.
But I feel like it, just like everything else, it stole all of its technology.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that would make a lot of sense, that if it infected some other alien species that had this vehicle, then it would become that alien. And I
mean, that's just how it reproduces.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like these stocks are fucking, like, ooh baby, that's a different episode. That was last episode.
But no, I think that unless it's something that is like the Thing, or it's like Annihilation, that doesn't really necessarily have a motive, that it's just that it just does what is in its nature. Mm-hmm. I think if we are concerned about aliens that are smart like us coming and destroying us, I think that there's a little bit of a logical disconnect when it comes to that. I think that's mostly our self-loathing talking, because empathy increases with intelligence and knowledge. Our ability to actually look at the way that other people are living and be like, and feel for them. It's not the other way around. Our empathy doesn't decrease the more we get to know the rest of the world. So I think I would like to think that it's more like Close Encounters, or it's more like a peaceful species, because what benefit do they have in destroying us? It doesn't make a difference to them. It's just going to waste their resources to do that. Maybe they have infinite resources because they figured out how to mine asteroids and planets with nobody on them. What is the purpose in them coming here and destroying us? I would like to hope and think that that a species that is that technologically advanced would not be so bitter and vengeful and wrathful and just awful. Because I think that when it occurs in humans, is just the fact that we've only been here for a couple 100,000 years. We're still basically apes, and we're still pretty dumb.
True. I think that's a beautiful sentiment. I think there's two reasons why I think I disagree. The first is it's a bold assumption to make that the intelligence empathy dynamic that you're talking about would also work on whatever organism is coming at us. And the second one is the circumstances. Maybe it's like, no, we just need a new planet. Yeah. And yours fits. And when it comes down, it's like Zod. Yeah. It's just when it comes down, it's us or you, and it's us. Mm-hmm. So, and we can kill you, so we will. And so they don't have empathy only because they're so scared. So I don't know. Obviously neither of us have the answers.
No, of course not.
I like to think that too. I like to think that there's just a bunch of Star Trek Federations up there just like kicking it and waiting for us to get that warp drive. Yeah. And then they're going to have a big party and we're all going to be on forward 10. Yeah. Like pounding some fucking drinks from the replicator and boning on the holodeck. Yeah, dude. Fucking party. But there's for every one of those. I think it's good to have that hope and that fear alive constantly, and we have to always have them. I mean, I feel like we space mined this one as much as we could. We got this one
pretty good.
Is there anything else you want to add?
No, but I do like that you brought up Arrival, because that was one that I was going to bring up if you hadn't. Yeah, that's one that is another one of that shows the flaw in humans, like being scared, like our fear has kept us alive for this long, but it's also could prevent us from going farther.
Yeah. We should come over one night. We have the arrival nights, where we swap the discs and then we put one in, and whatever it is, that's the one we watch that night. And if anyone doesn't know, The Arrival is the 1996, I want to say, movie where they like can bend their knees, and Charlie Sheen is in it. It's really bad. And Arrival is the 2015, 16 movie.
Then you can come over for my The Room nights.
No, that's oof. No thanks. No thanks. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We're gonna start going long on these. We usually try to hit 30 minutes ish.
Yeah, around there.
Sometimes we go a little over, but I think we're gonna try to make this like 40 minutes and see where it goes.
Yeah.
Let us know if you don't like that. I don't know. How do you listen to our shit? Do you drive around? What are you maniacs do?
YouTube comment?
Yeah,
I don't know. Discord. If
Who
you're
the
into
hell
Discord.
are you?
I don't know.
What is your deal? How do you listen to us? Where do you listen to us? Are you pooping right now? These are things Abe needs to know. All right, enough of that. Check in with me later. DM me if you're pooping. All right. All right, thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.